Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the witnesses for being here. Look, I believe getting tax legislation signed into law is absolutely critical to getting our economy growing. I must admit, though, I've been skeptical of the border adjustment as a central element of the blueprint, but I am trying not to be. It's not because I oppose border adjustment in all contexts. As many of you know, I'm a strong supporter of a more conventional border adjustment consumption tax. My concern is really rooted in three questions. Does border adjustability in the blueprint pick winners and losers? Who will the tax burden ultimately shift to? And is it compliant with our international treaty obligations? It's just three simple questions. From what I've heard today, the answer to the first two questions hinges on economic theory. The currency will adjust to offset the tax. Market analysts and currency experts have been skeptical. Wall Street firms believe there is a large potential for disruption and could cause volatility in the market. With respect to question three, it really seems at best border adjustment is in a case of first impression, or at worst, it's a flagrant violation of our international obligations. I'm also hearing very real concerns from Main Street, Ohio, where I represent. One major employer in my district sells coffee, but coffee beans generally come from high-altitude mountains in Africa and Latin America. You just can't buy much U.S.-grown coffee here in America. Border adjustment would increase the price of coffee. I'm very concerned for the low-margin companies in my district that rely on imported goods, not primarily produced in the United States, whether that be coffee or any other good that can only be imported. So look, I'm a business guy like Mr. Kelly, a CPA, a tax practitioner. I understand taxes and I understand business. I've been in the business world for 30 years. I've made all of my decisions on factual background, normally not on economic theory. In fact, economic theory in many cases in the business world can be troubling if you do it the wrong way, as you all know. So to each witnesses, can any of you assure me that the currency will adjust so that there will be no effect to the cost of our consumers? Yes or no to each one of you?
No, I can't.
Anybody? No. There's going to be an effect to our consumer.
I don't
Currency
think
will
anyone can
adjust
say
so that-
nothing has no effect. I think it will be extremely minimal.
But there is an effect. Mr. Lindsay, you gave an answer on my third concern, which is WTO. To each other witnesses, do you have any experience to know whether this will pass WTO? Yes or no?
No one will know whether it can pass WTO until it's brought there. No one could possibly know the answer to that question.
Anybody else? Do you think yes or no will it pass WTO?
I don't think it will, based on discussions with lots of trade lawyers.
Any other individuals, yes or no, will pass WTO?
Difficult to know. It's very similar to VAT that is being enforced today. So.
Mr. Lindsay, I'm going to come back to you because I was listening to you. You said WTO is a European-based organization, okay for Europeans to do it, but not Americans. Isn't it true that European-based border adjustments do not allow for deduction of labor? And if it did, the same thing with our VAT, if we eliminated labor in our VAT concept, it would become a VAT, and therefore would be WTO compliant.
Well,
yes or no?
Let me describe exactly what the Europeans did. What they did was they put on a VAT, and then they cut other taxes with the revenue they got.
I understand.
So essentially what they did was exactly what the BAT do, exactly.
I know, but if labor was eliminated, we would have the same thing.
But they eliminated, what they did was to reduce other taxes on labor
I understand
with it.
that.
So that's why I think it will pass WTO muster, because essentially the Europeans did exactly what this tax.
I've got a couple other questions I appreciate. Mr. Simon, you indicated in your testimony long implementation period for this to work. In the 1950s, 90 American companies made TVs. Today, there's not a single American company making TVs, and it hasn't been in over 20 years that an American company has made a TV. How long, on average, do you think it would take to get American companies back in the business of making TVs? Because you said a long implementation period. I'd like to know what that means.
TVs are being assembled in the U.S. for the first time since the 70s today, with a progression towards making them in the U.S. I can tell you the same thing about bicycles. They started in South Carolina in assembly, and they're moving into paint and powder and rolled steel. It takes time, and the process for bicycles has taken 4 years.
Mr. Lindsay, I'm going to come back to you. You said this bill is the best way to make America the most competitive place in the business world. Is this the only way to get this accomplished, this bill? Is it the only way? I'm not,
This is the best way that I have seen to get it done.
so far.
That's correct. And I'm, by the way, very supportive of what was called for here, which is careful implementation, phasing in, and things like that. I'm a big supporter of it, and what I hear from the chairman and others is that they are too.
All right,
So I think that will happen.
I thank you
All
all
time
for
has
your
expired.
testimony.